keynote of the day, please welcome to the stage Michael Ward, Managing Director of Harrods. Michael will be interviewed by Helen Merriott, Senior Vice President of Consumer Products, EMEA and APAC, for Publicis Sapient.
So Michael, wonderful to have you here today and looking forward to having the conversation about how Harrods is navigating the future of luxury. And it is just you and I and a few friends. So I hope you don't mind we invited you all. But really look forward to the conversation. So opening up with, I think, one of the most interesting questions for our industry, the evolving role of the department store. I hesitate to call Harrods a department store. But the evolving role in this digital-first world. How important for your business and for Harrods is experience and theatre?
Well, experience and customer service is absolutely everything to us. An experience is built up on many levels, and it's not something that is superficial. You start by having the relationships with the brand to create the most amazing environments, to whereby in some of our boutiques, the families of the owners have put their original paintings to give that real personal touch. The second then is to make sure that the curation of the product, in an average store you may get 60 to 65% of the product. We'll get over 90, and it's that 20 to 30% that makes a difference for the customer. And then you make sure you get the exceptional pieces, the one-offs that they curate for you. But then you take it a step further. And you do as we did with Dior, where nobody expected us for the whole store to be taken over by Dior. And inside, to have the experience of Christian from when he first tended the Rose Garden in Granville to where he was creating the great Maison et Montagnier, to then interfacing with the great literary and cultural artists of the time at the Col Noir. And then, of course, that's not enough. You have to do something else and something else and something else. And I think unless you've got this tireless hunger to want to continue to create, you become less relevant.
I love that, and I particularly love the way the curation of the range, the extended range, to bring that to your consumer, your customer, is part of the experience. It's not a separate thing, a separate set of activities.
No, everything is perfectly curated. And when we design brands and we design new openings, each one is done with a huge attention to detail to make sure it fully reflects that brand and that brand's position.
Okay, love that too. We had a great conversation earlier as we were preparing about retail is detail, always has been detail, but attention for detail in this context has lots of examples to come as well, I think. So I'm going to move us on to talk about commerce, unified commerce, omni-channel. How is Harrods adapting to meet the challenge of this increasingly channel-less world?
I think we start with one basic concept, and that's the customer. How does the customer wish to be served? A good .com platform is basically you have to have and is taken for granted. But it's what else do you layer onto that? Our over-the-telephone business is 2.5 times our .com business. And that's all about being able to produce unique products to people across the world which they would not have access to. And done in a way that they pay for the delivery and I make full margin and there's no return. So for a .com business, that's actually quite unique and quite good. So it's all experiences, but it's then making sure you can fulfill that finally in the store with just amazing amounts of customer service. And it's that customer service which is the final piece on the cake that makes sure that customer will come back again and again and again. And it's creating emotional connections with those customers so that they really feel they have to come back. I always remember one story of a lady who just had a baby who was really nervous going to her first show with her husband for a firm's dinner. And she came into one of the stores, and the assistant said, actually, I don't think you need an evening dress. I think you need, why don't you get a leather jacket and some gorgeous trousers and a beautiful white blouse? And they dressed, and she looked amazing. And that day, he arranged for her to go to the hairdressing salon, and they went out to this event. And the next day, the husband came in. And the sales assistant started cowering in the background, thinking, what have I done? And the comment of the husband was, thank you for giving me my wife back. And that's
it's a lovely example. It's meet the customer where they are and actually almost provide advice, be that sort of voice of advice.
But also be a curator of their dress rather than simply being an order taker.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that I think is super interesting about your business is experience and tradition in many respects, and the heritage is super important. But you're also doing some really interesting things with data and AI that solve for problems and actually drive the business forward. Could you talk a little bit about the single view of customer and how that program and intervention has kind of helped with delivering for customers?
I think the starting point for me was this sort of slightly too old person running this business of a program. So I got myself off to Oxford and did a course on artificial intelligence, which was like taking scales from my eyes. And that helped us to embrace and really push forward. But the first thing for us was to create a single platform that allowed us to have personalization for our customers. It allowed us to have knowledge and data, and it allowed us to build a data science team that really started to understand our customers. And some of the propensity models that we've built are really quite frightening in terms of identifying the potential of customer spend. And the models that we've now built to be able to create universal size curves, to be able to do markdown in season, and to do end-of-season markdowns, gives us a degree of accuracy which I really didn't think we were going to get, but has helped us, one, in making the size curve is more relevant, making sure we have a greater sell-through, marking down in season and trading in season, again getting a greater sell-through. And all of this ultimately means we come out with a much higher margin.
I think that's great. And what's interesting for me is some people might look at your business and say, what could be relevant to other retailers? But there's so many things you're doing I think are super relevant. So looking at the size curve, using the data that you have to sort of to then be thoughtful about the buy. And I think the other piece on minimizing returns or zero returns is also super relevant.
And I think the other key that we have there is when the buyers go to the showrooms, we switch it all off. And then it's about the skill, the expertise, the quality of some of the best buyers in the world who go into the showrooms and buy things that people don't know they want yet until they see it in Harrods on the map.
Which is the creativity and the flair that we know we need in luxury that you bring to every intervention with a big investment in your people. Investment in sort of skills and development so they have the skills to be able to go and be creative.
Absolutely.
And make great choices. Brilliant. So I'm going to ask a slightly naughty question next. You do know it's coming, which is about e-commerce in luxury. So arguably it's more difficult to make e-commerce work in luxury with the technology that's been available to date. How important do you think e-commerce is for a luxury business?
As I say, I think e-commerce is something that you must do, and it's part of the relationship that you have with your customer. But I think we're going through a huge evolution in e-commerce. We saw the demise of Matches. Net-a-Porter is probably work in progress. Very few people make any money out of luxury fashion. And then you've got to think about what the brands want to do for themselves. Do the brands really want to work through third parties? When most of them, over the last 10 years, have managed to get a full controlled environment. So I think, yes, you have to be a player, and yes, you have to have that ability to communicate with the customer. But I think the jury's out on where we'll be in 5 to 10 years.
Very interesting. And I think some of the conversation we had yesterday with Mark Elkins from L'Oreal was sort of this topic of agentic agentic AI, and how might that change how AI start doing the buying for us. So when bots do the buying, and we were talking in preparation about that being another disruption that we'll deal with when it arrives. So I'd like to talk a little bit about loyalty, and loyalty in your context. So you have a Harrods rewards program, but I know that the way you think about loyalty is much more encompassing. Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that the loyalty scheme was something that was built to start to create and gain information on customers.
Yeah.
We had a culture where people thought they knew what our customers wanted, and they thought had become almost enshrined in the culture of the business. Now everything that we have is data-driven. So when we look at what we do, we can take an informed decision. We're very, very, very fortunate. The average luxury business has got 2 touch points to give an information on a customer. We have over 18. And those 18s will tell us whether or not they're buying luxury brands and non-luxury brands. They'll tell us what they're eating. They'll tell us what their perfume choices are. They'll tell them everything that we do in every service that we have. So this total holistic view of a customer is hugely important. And that gives you much more predictive ability to be able to understand what that customer is going to do next, and indeed, which customers you are overlooking and which ones you should be concentrating on, because they have got huge spending power.
And there's much being talked in terms of luxury and spend, and where spend is moving to. We now have Gen Alpha, we heard yesterday, that is having much more influence. Even if they're not the shoppers, they could be influencing sort of products that are being bought. How are you thinking about attracting that next generation of luxury shoppers?
I think for us, it's about using the products that are relevant and the brands that are relevant to those customers.
Yeah.
And we're in the fortunate position of being able to be a global launchpad for brands. So the likes of the launch of Kylie Jenner gives us huge credibility within the right population, with the right social media, with millions of views across the world. And that engages us. And it's quite interesting that our profile of shoppers is really quite easily balanced towards the younger generation. And it's the use of those brands and those products that gets us through.
Really interesting. And over time, they will become the core of your shoppers, and you've got the data, and
Well, I think that's the great benefit of a reward scheme. You can start them buying a beautiful perfume, and then a small leather goods, and then a large leather goods, and then we get them into fashion. It's the whole journey and the lifetime value of a customer that you can start to focus on rather than being transactional.
Okay, wonderful. I love the story you tell as well about the Salon de Parfum on the 5th floor in Knightsbridge, and how that's become a destination and has a significant share of the spend in the market.
I think that's really about not standing still and anticipating trends. Right at the beginning of the luxury perfume, we anticipated that we wanted to own that category, and we built the Salon de Parfum. And to be honest, the perfumers thought we were congenital idiots selling on the 5th floor very expensive perfumes. But we built relationships and we built stories that go around it. A story like you go into one of the boutiques in Guerlain and spend the morning creating your wedding fragrance. It'll be the only one in the world, and every time you smell it, it'll remind you of your wedding. And it's building those emotional touch points that's important. But it also comes back financially. In the UK, 50% of all fragrances over £150 are now actually sold through Harrods. So being able to anticipate the trend, but service it in the most beautiful way with an emotional contact, means that you could be an absolute winner.
Okay, I love that. Having met Michael a couple of weeks ago for our prep, I shared with one of my teenagers, I have 3, who is a boy and really into fragrance, about the Salon de Parfum, so we'll be booking ourselves in to come for a visit. You have a new customer. So turning a little to the near future. So in a world where luxury, in luxury cultural and creative excellence is becoming super important and arguably the new table stakes. You're in a unique position and are so very much a leader. One of the things you talk about is you're always driving for what's next, what's next, what's next. So what can we expect to see from Harrods next?
I think you'll see this continued anticipation of trends and a real wanting to build these relationships with the customer. Because we think that the future of where we'll be going over the next period is going to be far, far, far more of a personalized relationship. You know, we're lucky that we can use what I call a rifle rather than a blunderbuss. And that rifle allows us to build and develop that relationship with customers. So I think that personalization, building this emotional relationship, is going to be the future for those that succeed in retail. It's also about making sure you still get the most beautiful products, because we should never, ever, ever forget that product is the absolute lifeblood of what we do.
Really interesting. And again, even though you have this unique proposition and unique location in Knightsbridge, there's so much in there that's relevant to every retailer.
But it's an interesting, everybody calls our location in Knightsbridge unique. We say we make our own weather. Every other department store that was outside of the main drag died. Whether that was ultimately Saint-Martin and all of the French department stores. And it was only those that were consolidated. Yeah. I think we sat back and said we are actually going to create our own weather. Something unique, something different, something exceptional. And the customer has come.
Yeah, and they continue to come. There's also there's some lovely stories that you tell about what next in terms of the interiors, in terms of the sort of the visual merchandising that you're doing. Is there anything we can expect to see, a sneak peek of what's coming over the summer?
I think where our biggest issue at the moment is our fine jewellery rooms, and we are currently working with the planners to create something which even our own people within the store thought, no, we can't do it. And if we have one absolute maxim within the business, it's we can't not accept that we can't do something. And to the point where we're going to have to build 3 foot beneath the foundations of the original building in order to accommodate it. But we will do so because it's the right thing to do.
That's fantastic. I can only imagine the planning conversations, but I'm not going to ask you that question here with the local authority. So just to close, there's a lot going on in luxury. The consumer's changing, the spend is moving, but you're the custodian of this amazing business, this historic and iconic name. Where do you expect Harrods to be in the next, say, 10 years?
I think the first thing I'd say is my time horizon, if I knew what was going to happen in the next 3 years, I would be more than happy. Luxury is going through quite a transformation at the moment, a transformation of who the winners are going to be and who the losers are going to be. And we're starting to see the emergence for the first time of some of the smaller, more interesting brands, which the consumer is absolutely loving. And I'm really looking forward to, in about 10 days' time, to be opening the new Schiaparelli, where the customer is saying, I want something different, I want something new, I'm going to move my buying patterns there. And increasingly we're seeing this change to actually it's about the quality of the product. We opened a new room with the most stunning cashmeres, and actually the ones that were the most expensive, but the most beautiful, were the ones that sold. So I think continue to be flexible and to make sure that you can change rapidly in, I think, what is going to be a really rapidly changing world.
Wonderful. So there's this big agile, being able to move rapidly, and the whole theme of our conversation about connections, experience, and relationships is so powerful.
And I think also going that extra mile for people to make sure that you do put service at the bottom of your absolute bottom of your pyramid in terms of the customer. Now, when we've opened new rooms, it's about how can we have authority, whether or not that's in lingerie, whether or not that's swim and resort, or whether or not that's in evening wear. but it's about having an absolute authority. And it's no longer, I need it to be this brand.
Wonderful. Starting and ending with the customer.
Always.
Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.